Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. My name is Femke from Femke the Fiction on Instagram and Bookish Buddies over on Twitter. And today I am here with you with all the books I read from January until March. So my reading mojo has been getting back to me. It's still very much on or off. In the first week of April, for example, I read 4 books and then afterwards I didn't read anything. So, you know, that's what's happening here. I read 15 books from January until March. And without further ado, let's get into the books for January. So I'm trying to do this in the order that I read them, but I don't have like my Goodreads with me or anything, so I am winging it a little bit. The first book I read was The Golden Mole by Catherine Rundell. So this is a non-fiction about animal species that have been driven to extinction by humans, by people. Or near extinction, haven't been seen in a long time, basically. And this book, to say I enjoyed it wouldn't be the right word, I guess. It's not really a book to enjoy, although there are very fun anecdotes, history, bits about certain animals and everything, so it does make it enjoyable. But overall, this book really raises awareness of how much we as a species have destroyed the planet, and with that, other animals' habitats. So I think this book is equal parts like sad but also hopeful, because it ends on a positive note, basically. Like, yeah, this one hasn't been seen until then, so there is hope. And overall, I think I gave this one 4 stars. I would really recommend reading this one because there are some fun species in here. Then up next, I read Juliana Shark by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. This is a middle grade book about a girl named Julia who moves with her parents to, well, I don't remember where they move, but they move somewhere to live in an old lighthouse because her mother is researching Greenland sharks, which are quite, well, we think they are quite rare. We don't quite know, but which are elusive because they live at tremendous depths. And this book is a lot about mental health, and I think this had great representation. It was different than what I thought it would be. I thought there would, in that sense, be more interaction with Julia and the shark, but the shark is more of a symbol in this book than it is like an actual character with a proper role to play. So that is just something you might want to be mindful of reading this book. Regardless, it was a very good book. I really enjoyed it. I think I also gave this one 4 stars. And yeah, like I said, this is middle grade, like contemporary middle grade with great mental health representation. Then I read Lock and Key Volume 1, which is called Welcome to Lovecraft. I read this and then I decided to just rewatch the entire series. And I do have to say that these graphic novels are a lot more graphic than the series is with regards to like violence and gore. I'm not quite sure which one I like better. I think at this point I like the TV show better, but that's because I have seen all of that and I have only read the first one of these, so I don't know the exact full story of this one yet. But again, I think I gave this one 4 stars. It was very gripping in that sense. It deals with emotional trauma, loss of a loved one, and it just really hits hard in that regard. Then I read Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan for the Read-Along Queens. I don't know. My feelings about this book are a bit, I'm like, there's a duality here. On the one hand, I really enjoyed it for how fast-paced it was, how fast the plot moved. Really did like the plot, all the mythical creatures we got and all that. But at the same time, I also kind of disliked it for how fast it was going, because I would have personally liked more character development, which I think is something this book was lacking. So I gave this book 3 stars, 3.5 stars. We also discussed this during our live discussion, basically. And we said, you know, well, what makes me kind of dislike this book would very much be something that another person would love this book for. So I'm well aware, I'm not bashing it, just for my personal tastes. I would have liked it to be a bit more, to move a bit more slowly. Then we have Where the Drowned Girls Go by Seanan McGuire. This is the 7th book in the Wayward Children series, I want to say. I don't quite remember if I gave this 3 or 4 stars. I think overall this is one of my least favorite installments in the series. That is not to say I didn't enjoy it, but overall I think we have less of the whimsical worlds in this one, and we have more of the gruesome reality, basically. Which is good to show, but overall I just tend to prefer the ones with the whimsical realities more. Alright, so those were all of the books I read in January, and let's move on to February. So the first book I read in February was Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is quite a chunky science fiction book. And I have mixed feelings towards this, because I was struggling with this book. In the end, I am glad I finished it, because I really did enjoy the ending of the book, essentially. But for me, it just took a bit too long to get there. And I mean, I can see why this length was necessary. I just didn't particularly care about a lot of the characters in here, which made this a bit of a struggle to read, I want to say. I think in the end I gave this 3 stars, something like that. That is, like, I really did enjoy the final bits of the book, and I really did enjoy how cleverly it was invented, because I think this is a very innovative book, and it asks some really great like philosophical questions and all that. But yeah, it just, for me, was a little bit of a struggle to get through. Then the next book is another chunky one, and that is Ruin by John Gwynne. So this is the 3rd book in the Faithful and the Fallen saga, and I was supposed to have read this for the Read-Along Queens back in, I want to say, November 2021, I want to say. A long time ago. I was slumping, this is massive, it did not go well. Whatever. I finished it now. I think aspects of this book are my favorite in this series, but at the same time, it was a bit repetitive with regards to the amount of like walking and the amount of battles we had. So there's that. The ending of this book absolutely broke me. I think I sobbed uncontrollably for like an hour. It was not pretty. But yeah, this is full of twists and turns, and overall, I think this is just one of my favorite series ever. I mean, I say this because I also read the 4th one in this series, but I will get to that in a little bit. But yeah, I really did like this book. I gave it 5 stars. It broke my heart, it broke my soul, but it was worth it. So, okay, so from this point on, I'm not quite sure what the order is, so I'm just going to grab them as I go. One of the next ones I read was this one, Murder at the Bookstore by Sue Minix. This, to me, is a little bit of a case of false advertising, because it's called Murder at the Bookstore, but the murder doesn't even happen at the bookstore. It happens on a boat. So I was a bit sad about that. Then there's, like, I read this for Cat Lady Readathon because there's a cat on the cover, but there's no cat in the book. So yeah, overall, literally my favorite thing to happen was that she got a puppy in the final chapter. I'm not sure if I gave this 1 star or 2 because I was feeling generous, but it wasn't much more than that. Yeah, I don't know. I had high hopes for this one. It looked like such a cozy murder mystery, but unfortunately that didn't turn out to be the case, and I'm sad, but it is what it is. I mean, that is also to say I literally don't remember anything that happened in this book, except for the fact that the murder didn't happen in the bookstore, but it happened on a boat, and that there was no cat. So 'Tis a sad day. Then up next, we thankfully have one that I did enjoy, and that is Explorers on Witch Mountain by Alex Bell. This is the second book in the Polar Bear Explorers Club series. Wow, my mind blanked there for a second. And I just really, really love these. I just love how basically ridiculous the characters are that are invented in this series. I don't know, I'm so fond of this series. I absolutely love it. I love the characters on here, how they have such a tight friendship despite all being very different. And yeah, these books are hilarious. We have such fun twists and turns, and I cannot recommend this series enough. I highly recommend this series to anyone who wants a fun, spunky middle grade. Then up next was the book I think that Esmay challenged me to read for February, which we were doing and then kind of failed, but whatever. But that is We Free the Stars by Hafsa Faisal. I started reading this when this came out, which is a couple of years ago. And then I just never continued because I was afraid of the pain, the emotional trauma. So yeah, but I finished this. This broke me. And I loved every second of it, and I gave it 5 stars. And I mean, I don't know why I waited. Probably reading slump, which is my excuse for a lot of things these days. But I'm very happy I finished this, because this is definitely one of my favorite books of the year. And then for the final book in February, I read Heart of the Sun Warrior by Su Lin Tan, which is the sequel to Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Again, we read this for the read-along queens. This, for me, was very much more of the same as the first book. The plot was very interesting. I loved the new characters that we got. We had some very, very heartbreaking moments in here. But overall, I still feel like this was too fast-paced for my liking. And there was not enough character development because of it. Regardless, I would recommend this to anyone who loves a fast-paced book. Because, again, I did not dislike it, but it was just, it didn't hit, you know, all the boxes for me to give it a 5 stars. But yeah, like I said, if you love a fast-paced book with Chinese mythology and everything, this is great. Highly recommend this for you. Then moving on to March, the first book, at least I think, this is the first one I finished, I don't quite remember. The first book I finished in March was Unravel the Dusk by Elizabeth Lim, which is the sequel to Spin the Dawn. And this was for Final Book Support Group. So there are 4 books on here that are actually all kind of like final books. So I'm really proud of that. So, Unravel the Dusk, Elizabeth Lim. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. I would have loved this if I read this closer to when I read the first book. This is just one of those books that I outgrew, I want to say. Like I said, I don't dislike, I gave it 4 stars. It was a very great book, but me from 4 or 5 years ago would have loved this even more than I did right now. Quite scared I have more of those books on my shelves, which, I mean, is okay. My reading tastes have changed quite a bit in the last 2 to 3 years, I want to say. And this, unfortunately, was one of them. But, like I said, regardless, I still gave this 4 stars. But if I read this closer to when I read the first book, this would have been a 5 star. Then up next, we have Layla and the Blue Fox by Kieran Millwood Hargrave, which is... It's not really a sequel, but it kind of is, like to Julia and the Fox. Julia and the Shark, I am sorry. Layla and the Blue Fox and Julia and the Shark. I keep getting them confused. And again, this is a middle grade contemporary novel in which the animal plays a symbolic part. And this one didn't particularly have like a lot of like mental health rep, but this had diversity rep, but also those experiences, because the main character is I want to say the daughter of, but like she's a refugee from I believe it was Syria, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, this really talks about their experiences, you know, moving from Syria in this case to England and all that. So this really is, you know, to do with current affairs and all that. Same as Julia and the Shark over there, right there. Again, I think I gave this 4 stars also. So yes, I really quite enjoyed this. Then up next we have The Burning God by R.F. Kong, which is the final book in the Poppy War trilogy. I am sad to say that I did not love this book. So for me, the Poppy War was 5 stars, the Dragon Republic was 4 stars, and the Burning God was 3 stars. I found this very frustrating to read at times because, I mean, I get that, you know, certain things are characteristic of Rin, but at the same time I feel like she's not learning from her mistakes. She just keeps making the same mistakes, and it was just very, very frustrating to read. There were some good twists and turns in here, but overall I think I read a review on Goodreads which I think was, you know, said something that I fully agreed with, and that was that there was a lot of telling going on and not a lot of showing, which also didn't help in my reading of this. I do have to say that I think the end was fantastic. I think it was the only fitting end to this series. It was, I mean, it made me cry, so that was good, but just overall I was not a huge fan of this conclusion. And then the final book I read in March is one that I mentioned before a little bit, and that is Wrath by John Gwynne, which is the final book in the Faithful and the Fallen saga. I also gave this 5 stars. I think this is my favorite book in the series. Everything gets resolved in this one. It ends on a, I don't want to say like a perfect note, but at the very least it ends on a very hopeful note. And yeah, there's just lots of mythology and everything in this one as well. And I always love that so much. So those were all the books that I read from January until March. I am planning to do like monthly wrap-ups now. So if all goes well, you should have a monthly wrap-up from me from now on. If I cannot make that, I might squish 2 months together. I'm not quite sure about that yet. Like I said, I'm still figuring things out and trying to find my way again with BookTube, with filming and all that. If you've read any of these books or if you want to read them, please let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and hitting the subscribe button if you want to. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!